Hello everyone, Chef Eric here and welcome back to the YouTube channel for yet another amazing recipe. And today we're making lasagna, so let's get started. So step 1 in making our beautiful lasagna is to make the meat sauce or the bolognese. So you want to start by chopping up some red onion into some thin slices and setting it aside. The next ingredient you want to prep is some garlic, so just want to pass it through a garlic crusher. Here I'm using a couple of cloves. The full recipe will be in the description box down below if you need it. You can also use a grater or you can crush it with a knife. Lastly, you want to chop up some carrots into some nice thin slices and then chop it, then dice up the carrot. Set that aside and you can now work on the last ingredient, tomatoes. So you want to chop your tomatoes into nice and even cubes and then also set that aside. You could use celery for this recipe, but I didn't want to use any, so that's entirely up to me. Set the vegetables aside and you can now head on over to the stove. And in a large wide frying pan, you want to add in a touch of olive oil, and over super high heat, you want to cook your minced meat. It's important you're going to cook the meat and brown it and get a super nice color on it so that you can have nice flavor build. So at first water will start to seep from the meat, but you want to ensure you cook all of that water out and you're cooking on super high heat, remember. Just want to cook until the meat is super dry and it's nice and crackly and it'll smell really nice. The whole kitchen will literally smell amazing. Set that aside and set the meat onto a separate plate and then bring back the pot. Then to the same pot you want to add a touch more of olive oil or regular oil and then go in with your onions, carrots and garlic and fry that on a medium-low heat for a couple of minutes until the onions start to get a little bit soft and the garlic becomes fragrant. Once it's nice and fragrant, you're gonna go in with your tomatoes. Add in your tomatoes and cook them for a couple of minutes until they start to break down. Once the tomatoes break down, you're gonna go in with some tomato paste and cook that for at least 5 minutes because tomato paste you need to really cook out the raw flavor in order to have good tasting lasagna. And you see that fond at the bottom of the pan, we need to get rid of that. So add a splash or two of red wine and scrape it off the bottom of the pot. You can also use a little bit of water if you want to keep things, halal. Now we want to start to season this up, so go in with some salt, curry powder, black pepper, thyme and of course some rosemary and give that a really good mix. As always, the food recipe, the measurements and descriptions will be in the description box down below. Once you have your base ready, add in your seared meat and give that a really good mix. And the last ingredient we're going to add to this is some water. You're going to add in a lot more water than you think you need. Cover and allow to cook for about an hour and 45 minutes. This is going to allow the meat to get really nice and soft so that you have a really good tasting lasagna. So don't skip on the amount of time you leave it for. You have to let it go for at least an hour and 45 minutes. Now, in the meantime, you want to start by grating up some cheese. Here I'm using mozzarella cheese, so just pass it through a box grater and then set that aside in the fridge or the freezer so it remains nice and hard. I use the big side of the grater to do this. Set that aside and you can now work on the last component, the bechamel or the white sauce. And to make the white sauce, you want to get a really wide pan, and to that you want to add in about 2 tablespoons of butter and then add in some all-purpose flour. With a whisk, you want to mix this together on low heat until the roux starts to cook out. This is basically called a roux. Then you want to slowly add in your milk, tablespoon at a time, until it slowly comes together to form one thick paste. You also want to keep adding milk until you have a really nice, smooth and creamy white sauce. Get rid of the whisk and now get in with a wooden spoon. You can now start to season this, so go in with some salt, some black pepper and a touch of nutmeg. The nutmeg is just there to get rid of the milky flavor and cook until it's nice and thick. You want to increase the heat a little bit to get it thick. Set that aside, and when your meat is ready, you want to give it a quick mix and then finally finish it off with a touch of oregano just to bring a little bit of brightness. The meat sauce should still be a little bit wet so that it can cook our pasta sheets. I'm happening to use some no-bake pasta sheets today, so that's why I left my sauce a bit wet. Now, for assembly time, you want to take a really large pan which you're going to use to layer your lasagna in. Here I'm using about an 8-inch square tin and I'm greasing that with some olive oil all around so that the lasagna doesn't stick in any part of the tin. So get it really nice and greased up and you can start to assemble. For this recipe, I'm using no bake lasagna sheets, so you don't need to no boil lasagna sheets, so you don't need to pre-boil them or anything. So add in your layer of meat sauce at the bottom and then go over with 2 layers of your no boil pasta sheets, just the way they are, raw as they are. That's the description box. That was what was on the box of the lasagna sheet, so I'm not complaining. Go over with your meat sauce and then you're gonna top that off with a layer of white sauce. Just get a spoon and slowly spoon that over and then top it off with some more cheese. Repeat the layers until you get all the way to the top, and when at the top, just then top it off with more white sauce, cheese and meat, and you're pretty much done with the assembly. You wanna cover this with some foil and then allow this to cook at 180 degrees for about 40 minutes for everything to fully cook through. Then you wanna remove the foil, turn up the heat to about 200 degrees, and allow it to cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until you get a nice broiling on the top, and you're pretty much done.